everyone. Happy Saturday. I am Kayleigh O'Keefe. I am the founder of Soul Excellence Publishing and Soul Excellence Ventures. And I'm so happy to be here on a Saturday. I was just watching Aurora before me, and Aurora is my favorite name. I was a huge Sleeping Beauty fan growing up, which is funny because she, just kind of lies there and waits to be kissed after pricking her finger. But I just loved the fairies, I loved the music, I loved Maleficent, so Aurora has held a special place in my heart. And it was funny thinking that I'm coming on here live after Aurora because I think it's interesting that I'm here in this conference at all. And I think it's going to highlight, as I share why, how it's going to take all types of people operating in all industries, just doing their thing to really bring 5D leadership into the 3D world. So I operate in the corporate sphere primarily. I work with high performing, high integrity corporate leaders who are leading large organizations. And then also many of them are in transition. And I would venture to say that that transition is the transition from the 3D corporate world into the milieu of the 5D experience and then back into the corporate world, creating and building up new systems from that experience. But the reason I'm here is a year and a half ago, quite honestly, I had never heard of the term 5D and 5D leadership. I would have no idea what you all are talking about. I would have no business being here. But a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity through invitation from Lee, Jane Woodgate, to join Adriana's book, Awakening, of which many of you who are presenting here wrote your stories in. And it's where I met Abigail. And when I got this book, I was fresh off of a corporate journey. I had been leading a tech organization in San Francisco for 3 years, building up a sales, service, and success team from scratch. So I was really in it, okay, we got to raise more money. We got to sell the new product, that kind of energy. But I knew that I had a bigger mission. I knew that I wanted to tap into my own soul's excellence, which was a word that just came to me, and express and create and bring forth something new into the world. So anyway, I'm invited to be in this book. I get the book, I open it, and Abigail's chapter, I believe, was first because her name is Abigail, beginning with an A. And I open the book and I read DNA Activation, Divine Technology for Humanity's Awakening. And I thought to myself, what did I just get myself into? How do I belong in a book about DNA activation, this term I had never heard of before in my life? And what I realized then, and I'm sharing with you now, is that this experience that we're having right now, this awakening that you're sensing, the feeling that you're having that there's something more within you, that to Aurora's point, our intuition is sending us all kinds of signals from the divine. This book revealed to me that there is so much happening in the world, and that each of us, wherever we are, whatever phase of life that we're in, whichever worlds that we operate in, has a mission, has a purpose greater than we could think possible. So I just think it's so fun that I'm here to here coming on a Saturday, my favorite day of the week to work, if that's what you call any of this anymore, where the energy is so good outside. I'm very much in the 3D world. I love college football. We got college football vibes today. But that we get to be here, and in just a year and a half, so much has changed. And I've learned so much by making this transition that I want to share with you, from operating in the corporate world, operating in the entrepreneurial space, kind of digging into this world, reading books like this, learning from leaders like you, and then bringing this back out into the corporate world. Because I'm still holding out hope that the corporate world is not totally lost. I used to think that a year ago, the leaders in corporate right now, they're not even all about profit anymore. They're actually promulgating values that will destroy society and will not support a free and flourishing world. So I was really extreme, like, no, there's no hope. And now I've come back and said, wait a second, there is hope. So if you're operating maybe still in corporate, if you're operating as an entrepreneur supporting people in corporate, or if you're simply operating as the leader of your own life, your own business, in your own world, I hope that what I share with you today will just be a little bit of inspiration along the path, and show you that um, we don't have to completely abandon who we are and the things that we've liked to do in order to tap into 5D leadership, in order to bring forth the messages from the 5D world into our lives. So, all right, super, super happy to be here. And I want to kick off with a quick story. So, just yesterday, don't know if you can tell with the bags under my eyes, just yesterday we launched our latest multi-author leadership book, The X Factor, The Spiritual Secrets Behind Successful Executives and Entrepreneurs. And it's what I've called this talk because I thought I would show up and share with you some of the lessons that I learned from connecting with these leaders who were in Germany, UK, Ireland, Cameroon, the US, all over, and who shared with me and with you in this book their spiritual awakenings. And there were big moments and there were small moments. But something happened yesterday when we got together as a group that felt even more important to come on and share with you today. So just imagine yesterday, we've launched this book, it's going throughout the world, and we all got on a call together and we live streamed it onto LinkedIn. The purpose was to share our X Factor, of course, to generate some interest in the book. And we're all sitting there on a screen, and just imagine a picture on your screen of men and women, all colors, all hairstyles, as one of our authors pointed out, different religions, different sexualities, just differences upon differences, different first languages, different worldviews, different politics, pretty much differences as far as you want to go are apparent on the screen, and then as we start to share. And as we're sitting there, one of our authors, Matthias, who lives in Switzerland, said out loud, look at this group. There are so many differences among us. And yet, as we collaborated on this book, as we shared our stories, and as we've launched it today, none of that has come up. None of that has mattered. And we all sat there just nodding our heads and really feeling that deeper connection, that deeper collaboration, that deeper awareness that we're here for something bigger than ourselves, and that we're not our physical identities. We're not all of these labels. We're not all of these boxes that we're put into. And I wrote down the 3 things that he noticed. He said, we could have been in this space where there was confrontation, but there was collaboration instead. We could have gotten together and focused on our differences, but we focused on our similarities instead. And then he said we could have focused on judgments of how people were showing up or what they're writing about, but we focus on compassion instead. And as I think about this shift from 3D to 5D and then back into the 3D world where we're operating right now, isn't that what it's about? Instead of confrontation, collaboration, differences, similarities, and instead of judgment, compassion. And I slept with that last night, and I woke up this morning and I had a major aha. And that was that the experience that Matthias had, the experience that all of us as authors in this book had, and as I'm talking about authors in a book, think of you and your community, you as the leader of your community, you as the leader of your family, you in whatever leadership role you're at. Just put yourself there for a minute. So what I realized this morning is that what he experienced and what we've experienced by launching this international bestseller, it's #1 in 4 different countries right now, is entirely the result of intentional action. This experience did not happen by accident. It happened by awareness, it happened by cultivation, and it happened through the three things that I want to share with you that I've really stepped into as a leader while being on this journey, while surrounding myself with incredible people like you, and being willing, of course, to experiment, to learn, to shed old ways, and to show up. So he notices, right? This is a very collaborative experience. Things are going really well. We may not agree on everything, but we're really supportive of this book. And to me, that's the only way it could happen because I set that intention. And as a leader, when there were many opportunities to get frazzled or shift our focus, I didn't go there. And so I'll tell you the three things that I did, hoping that they help you in your leadership roles. And even if you've heard them before, this is your invitation to go deeper, to tap in, to reset, to say, okay, have I really shifted from theory, from awareness of all of these tools, from awareness of all of these spiritual insights, have I shifted from theory into practice? Because one of the ahas from our authors in this, in the X Factor, Katrin, who writes about servant leadership, she talked about her journey being a very intellectual academic person, which I would consider myself to be, and many of the people that I work with. And we love nothing more than to read the next book, to follow the next idea, to read just one more article, to look up just one more stat, to just be in the world of theory, 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 mind. And there's almost this aversion to practice, as if somehow just the knowledge means it's embodied. And I think if you're here, you know that's just not how it works. So even if you've heard this before, let's take this as an opportunity to embody. So the first thing that enables me to hold space for so many leaders and also allows me to have the authors experience something like that, where they live in worlds where division is the name of the game among leadership right now. The first tool are the virtues. If you followed me, you might be rolling your eyes right now. I'm obsessed with the virtues as they were introduced to me by Tamala Ridge, who some of you know. And the virtues, the universal character traits, are the most compelling thing that I've found to connect people, especially very high-powered, opinionated leaders, and to move them from 3D, like just physical, material world, and back into the spiritual world. One of the ways that I do this, and I invite you to do this too, and we'll do it right now, is yeah, you can have the virtues on your phone, but I'm not really an app person. Like, I like to touch. I like to hold things. Physical touch is my love language. And I'm like, oh, I love you, virtues. This is what you get on Saturdays, like kind of loopy Kayleigh, if you haven't seen this Kayleigh before. So one of the most important things to do to unite a group of people is to call forth virtues, that you desire for the group to tap into and express, because it gets everyone on the same energetic wavelength in a way that just talking about the goal of like, we're trying to launch a bestseller here, it can't, because it gets people into that frenzied state of like, are we going to do it? Are we not going to do it? Am I going to be liked? Am I not going to be liked? Like, that's not going to work. So I like to align people on a virtue. And let me just clean up my screen so I can follow along here. Okay. So what I like to do for every time that I interact with a group, or anytime I'm just getting ready to write something, because the virtues invite us to shift away from opinion and into curiosity. So we'll just pull one right now and say, what is the virtue that we're all being called to tap into today? What is it that's being called forth to express? Ooh, I love this one. Okay. This is a virtue that actually, when I met with my group before launch, we pulled, and it changed the way we thought about communicating about the project. This is the power of the virtues. It changes our minds, it changes our words, which then changes our actions, which changes what happens here on the earth. So, sincerity is the virtue for today that we're all being called to embody. And this one's just so beautiful. I'm coming to you from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I don't know if this picture's from Florida. It looks a little Hawaii if I look at it, but like I see this all the time. It's beautiful. So let me read to you sincerity. And as I do, I want you to think about how could tapping into a word like this, a virtue, enable me to align my teams and my people in a way that actually goes deeper than a goal, deeper than a mission. Like it goes into the experience of how to be, it goes into the expansion in the experience and not just the result, not just the outcome. If you're like me and if you're like the high achievers that I work with, um, it's kind of like you expect the outcome always to be really good. So when it happens, you're like, yay, woo, okay, who cares? So the real joy is in the experience. So what is sincerity calling forth today? Well, sincerity is being open and genuine. Our words and actions reflect a truthful heart. People can trust that we mean what we say and we say what we mean. When we are sincere, our actions come from a pure intent. We give for the sake of giving. We are transparently truthful. We don't do things to impress others. We have no need to deceive or pretend to be something we are not. We know it is enough simply to be ourselves. And last thing on the back here, the practice of sincerity. I can be trusted to speak honestly, my intentions are genuine, and I am content to be myself. This virtue and all of the virtues, they cut across religions, they cut across nationalities, and this is why I use them as I lead authors from around the globe and I lead leaders from around the globe, because this is our universal language. This is something we can all get behind. This is what cuts through the differences and allows us to really be present to what is and invites us to show up in an even more true way because it's fully embodied by the virtue. So, sincerity, that's our word for today. How can you go about practicing sincerity? What does sincerity mean to you? Let me know in the comments. Just drop it in. I'll respond after. And the name of the Virtues deck, this is from the Virtues Project. So they're my go-to when it comes to all things virtues. And truly, like as you see, they just sit here on my desk before I write a blog post, before I lead a team meeting, as I lead my multi-authors. I pull one, and I'm telling you, the discussion that's generated from just one word and asking, what does this mean to you? How do you tap into this virtue? Is this a natural one is this one that comes naturally to you or one you have to practice? Like, this generates amazing conversation, and this is why the author group yesterday felt so connected, even though we were talking about spirituality and faith, which quite honestly can be one of the most divisive topics, and that's not what happened in our experience at all. And the last thing I'll say about the virtues, just for when it comes to your own leadership, is that we are being tempted every single day to offer an opinion. We're being solicited from so many places to have a hot take, to make a snap judgment without knowing any of the facts. And what I love about the virtues is before you speak, even just pulling a virtue, like it helps to calm and reconnect and remind that, do we have to have an opinion on everything? What if opinions just lock us in? What if a question, what if a perspective, what if an observation were much better than an opinion that then invites us to defend it over and over and over again? And this is what we're seeing in leadership a ton right now, which is an inability to, or an unwillingness to admit one is wrong. And I believe that's because of an over-attachment to opinion instead of an appreciation for perspective, which the virtues provide. So the virtues are my go-to tool, and they're really what help people to stay connected. But there are two other things that I'll just briefly share with you that could help in whatever you're leading, wherever you're headed, wherever your work is in the world. And that second thing is to focus on what you stand for. So again, coming from the corporate world, I see a lot of clarity of what people stand against. So there's lots of anti this, and I'm anti, if there's anti-vaccine or anti-bias or anti-racism or anti-something. And if there's one lesson I could impart on all of the corporate leaders that I work with, is that the focus on what you stand against draws your attention only to that thing which you do not desire to see more of in the world. And so just imagine in your own lives, like, what are the things that really drive you crazy, that you're really not for? Like, what do you not like? Now, to be against those things actually activates and gives those things so much more power. And so my guidance for leaders, and the way that I'm reminded each and every day, is to take a moment and really say, what do I stand for? What is it that I want to be known for? What is the legacy that I'm leaving behind? And trusting that it can always change. We're not locked into anything. But what I noticed when it comes to spiritual secrets among executives and entrepreneurs is their first versions of their chapters, there's so much like anger that pours out initially of all the things that they're against. Like, I'm against religion because it boxed me in as a child, and I'm against the corporate world because it's so greedy, and I'm against, and I'm against, and against, and like, I mean, just feel it as I'm saying it to you. Like, it's just so unattractive. And so the invitation always to the leaders I work with is like, okay, let's, let it out over here. Tell me what you're for. What do you stand for? What have you always loved? What have you always cared about? And for me, that's really easy. It's like, I stand for individual expression. I stand for creativity. I stand for inner freedom. I stand for a flourishing society. And when I stand for these things, it means that I'm able to call in people who also share that mission. But it also means that I'm not wasting tremendous amounts of energy getting riled up of all of the things that I don't stand for. And I'm by no means perfect. And in fact, I've had to take a real break from my political podcast that I really enjoy, because so much of it is the what we are against. And I want to be, and I encourage all of us to be, more aligned with what we are for. And right now, I believe many of us are here because we are for this great awakening that is happening. And we're actually happy to see the way some of the things are crumbling around us, or looking a bit like not working, wobbling around us, because we have enough trust and faith within that we know something even grander is emerging. So what is it that you stand for? This is where the focus needs to be. And this is where I think corporate leaders are making a huge mistake right now. They're very vocal anytime something happens in the culture to speak up and be against that thing. And I would just think to myself, what if these companies were a bit more steadfast in the few things that they stand for? Whether that be innovation, whether that be creativity, whether that be for the alleviation of poverty through capitalism, like whatever it is. What if you stayed true to what you stand for, instead of constantly being distracted by what you stand against? So we've talked about the virtues. We've pulled sincerity. How can we be more sincere today? We've talked about how to stand for something rather than against something. And the last thing I'll leave with you, that goes back all the way to the beginning of this conversation of like what made it possible for a group of people to come together and talk about faith and spirituality, one of the most divisive things on the planet to talk about. And that third thing is as a leader, it's related to number 2, it's all about your focus and your attention. It is so tempting, if you are a leader of a group of people, to focus on the squeaky wheels, to focus on the complainers, to focus on the people who can't seem to get out of their own way. And yet I promise you that while there's nothing wrong with helping people up and making sure they feel supported, when you look out into your groups, when you look out into your community, I believe right now it's super, super important to be highlighting those that are really embodying the values that you care about. So for example, I lead these projects. They're 4 months long with leaders around the world. They're each writing their chapters, and like when they do, emotions are coming up, and these leaders who literally have 500 people underneath them in management in companies, the fear, the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, like everything that comes up is like, whoa, it's super, super overwhelming. But when it does, I mean, and now I notice it, and it's like, ooh, okay, let's just see what happens. How's this person going to navigate? How can I help? How can my team help? But what I want you to know is that by feeding in and enabling so much of the fear, we're not doing anyone a service. And so, what I love to do among my groups of leaders is continue to highlight and really hold up the leaders who they're not going to do it because they don't need that, right? Like their ego is not dependent on praise. And so, what I like to do is really just showcase them as like, this person is an example of someone who is really embodying the things that matter most to them. And so when I say focus, I simply mean as a leader, in any given moment, we can choose fear or we can choose love. We can make a decision where our heart feels more open, or we can make a decision where it's like, it constricts, we feel it in the gut, we know it's kind of wrong, we're just like, And so we are called to focus in each and every moment on, is our heart expanding, and what can we say, and what can we think, and what can we do to start to encourage others to do the same. So beyond just highlighting those within my leadership group that are really just following through and showing up and being vulnerable and all of that, the other thing I like to do is really just keep the group focused on what matters most. No matter what you do right now, you know that when you're in a group of people, the insecurities that come up, the fears that come up, and you could be playing whack-a-mole with those things all day long and just like, no, it's okay, and like, tell me more about the fear, and like do that kind of thing, which I think is an okay way to hold space. But I'm really stepping out into, and I encourage you to just look around and say, okay, at what point is that indulging? At what point is that coddling? At what point of that is disempowering? Instead of really holding that space and raising the vibration for all the leaders to really feel it, and for everyone to step up. So I think this is true within corporate, whether it's running our own businesses, whether it's within our family life. It takes a tremendous amount of awareness and then self-regulation within ourselves to not get triggered and lose our own focus and just focus on all of the things that are going wrong, and instead on all of the things that are going really, really well and working in our favor. Which brings us back to the X Factor, the spiritual secrets behind successful executives and entrepreneurs. You're absolutely invited to pick up your copy. It's still just 99 cents on Amazon, and it's a bestseller in Germany, UK, Australia, and the US. We also had our first leader from the African continent, Patricia Nono from Cameroon, in this book. So we continue to expand as a company of the perspectives that we're bringing forth into our books. So you're absolutely invited to grab your copy so you can see yourself in the stories of other leaders and other people who've been on this journey. And I would say this book represents that transition where you have a group of high-powered leaders. They're running around in corporate. They've had a pause, like a real, something woke them up. They've now been exploring like all of the things that we're talking about here that sounded strange to me a year and a half ago. And now I'm like, yep, I'm all here for it. Like, this is like what I like being around. That's the journey that these leaders have been on. And now they're sort of coming out the other side and saying, great, how do I bring this now back to my teams, back to my organizations? How do I not separate spirituality and business? How do I recognize that they are part and parcel? And in fact, the spiritual is the foundation for business success. That peace will generate results. That inner freedom will generate results. Like, it's not about results, then I get the peace, then I get the freedom. Like, no. So definitely check out the book to follow those stories, to support the work that we're doing at Soul Excellence. And it's fun for me to be in a space like this. I'm as you can just maybe tell by my energy, I'm in these like go spaces all day long, and to come here and feel, you know, the energy that Abigail brings of like, let's just be light and ground down. Like, this is a helpful reminder for me. And if you're someone who happens to be watching who is in corporate, or maybe you're making that transition, or maybe you're working with leaders who are in corporate, we're also doing a ton right now in Soul Excellence Ventures at large when it comes to small group coaching, one-on-one coaching, where we're guiding you through that transition phase. And it's something new that I'm doing and just absolutely love. It's the work, it's the life that I've been living since being a part of Awakening with Abigail, and now being able to take other seasoned executives who've had 20 plus years, storied careers, and are saying, wait a second, I'm here for something else, but I don't know what I want to do. I'm afraid to take the leap. I'm afraid to leave corporate. I'm afraid to lose my reputation. I'm afraid for people to think I'm crazy. I'm having a lot of fun working with leaders in that position right now. And I've been tapping into everything I've learned from working with so many of you here in the summit, and just my experience on this journey. So with that, I will just leave you with the invitation. Download the Virtues app, pull the Virtues cards from the Virtues Project. Adding this as part of your routine will start to change the way you connect, you communicate, and ultimately how you lead. So it's certainly been one of my X factors, and you can read so many more and really discern what is your own X factor in our latest book. I'll put the link in so you can connect to all the authors, and just want to thank you all for showing up on a Saturday, and for being here and sharing this space. It's all about collaboration and co-creation right now. It's all about giving our little perspective as it relates to the journey that we're on, and I love being a part of it with you. So with that, have a happy Saturday, and stay tuned, because up next is one of my favorite people, Mary Gooden. Also owns a publishing company, also is a Reiki master, yoga extraordinaire, like someone who's helped me tremendously on my journey. So you're going to want to stay tuned and check her out at the top of the hour. Thank you for having me here. Definitely reach out if you'd like to learn more about the work that I'm doing, and can't wait to see you all soon. All right.